from Ice Age. And Ice Age means that it had deviated away from the sun. So it was a cold period in history. That's what scientists call. And then right now we're at interglacial age where the earth naturally warms itself. That means that the ice sheets will be thinning, the ocean will be swelling, the lakes will be swelling, which is a natural thing. And from a young reporter's point of view, what do you think, if it's really climate change or it's the world, it's the earth going through interglacial age?
Good afternoon. My name is George Kibaso from People Daily. In your presentation, you showed that since 1971 to 2009, the number of people affected by climate change had risen to around 4 million from 500,000. Is it possible to locate some data, some numbers on economic impacts on this?
Okay, afternoon. My name is Ronald. I have one question for you, Daktari, in regards to your presentation. You mentioned that livestock, actually, or the agriculture sector, is probably the biggest contributor in this country. As a country, or in this part of the world, Africa as a whole, food security is a big problem. And the devices or the makers of these climate-related actions want us to meet certain conditions. Yeah? So, as a scientist in that field, what is the direction for Africa? Because there's no way Somali is going to reduce his herd of camels, or Maasai for that matter. Because you realize these are sources of livelihood. And then if you look at the continent, perhaps our livestock population is, if you compare to other continents, maybe Australia or Brazil or China, it's not even there yet. Is it fair? Because I know you advise these policymakers. Is it a blanket? Should we go one direction as a continent, or will you go for issues as you answer those questions? Thank you.
There's one last one here. Yeah, but make your question brief.
I wanted to follow up on the methane one and the ruminants. Dr. about poor feeding of the livestock, but I'm also wondering about the ruminants in the wilderness. Do they also contribute to this methane? I have a second question. The research that findings, do they find a way into the compliance institutions when they set up factories that also emit in terms of, I'm thinking NEMA, are there recommendations that maybe the government institutions have taken up from the kind of research that you have undertaken?
Thanks, Kapista. I think that's the last one.
You can have that one more.
Yes,
please. Yes.
My question is on the effects of climate change on health, and in particular particularly on mental health. I really want to know how climate change affects mental health, like directly affects mental health, and whether it's an area that has been explored in terms of maybe anxiety that is caused by the effects of climate change and such, like what's the direct impact of climate change on mental health?
And just to add, maybe if it goes to diabetes and cancer, climate change.
Thank you. Thank you for those questions. I will answer them to the best of my ability, but I also recognize that some of these questions may need experts who are in the healthcare profession themselves. But yes, air quality affects children. Ladies and gentlemen, you know very well that the level of immunity of children compared to adults is low and develops with time altogether. So in terms of being affected by any risk, children are more hard hit biologically because of the body size, the small organs that they have altogether. What does that mean? Let me give you a scenario. If there's a specific dose that is given to an adult, there is a different one given to a child. And if there's an overdose to a child, by being given either by mistake or whatever happens together an adult dose, that kills a child. So the air quality that we're talking about, if I am an area that's polluted and I've got children, I am more capable of withstanding that risk of poor air quality compared to a child. They'll be affected more. And therefore, the respiratory you're talking about, when they affect the children, it now has got even a multiplier effect of going beyond the normal ability of an adult to be able to withstand and resist or tolerate as a body because of your body mass that you have compared to a child. That's just obvious altogether. However, specifics in this case can actually be better handled by medical practitioners like doctors who can be able to elaborate more on this. But yes, that is a big problem and it does affect their growth and development. Let me give you a story here and just to elaborate. We know very well that there is malnutrition. And some people, because of being affected by malnutrition, genetically, they may have been having the genetic predisposition of having a given height. But because of malnutrition, they will not grow that height and even irregular ability because brain development is hampered as well as growth and development. So that basically means that that ends up affecting them reaching their potential in terms of the genetic endowment that they have. Same thing happens with children when they're in this kind of situations where the air quality is very low. In fact, the health hazards involved have been documented and they are much more enhanced amongst children compared to adults. But more info in this case needs to be gotten from some research that can be done with the healthcare providers in this case. Then, as a trend in climate change, whether the current phenomenon of climate change or warming is due to the interglacial age that we are in. Now, what is there about climate change is, I mentioned that in science, we can only be able to make a decision that the rainfall pattern has changed, that rainfall has increased or reduced, or the temperature has increased by getting data. And when I mean data, it is high quality data for how many years minimum? 30 years. With 30 years, we can be able to detect and end up now getting statistically what we think is coming out as a trend. What I showed here as graphs, they are graphs from the year 1900. From those graphs, you will see that from the year 1940s, when we had the Second World War, going into the Second World War, the Industrial Revolution, where a lot of CO2 was emitted. And then, in my research, I've done research of monitoring carbon emissions from different backgrounds. And we have been able to document through specialized equipment how much CO2 can be emitted from livestock, from manure, and from given environments altogether, including being able to document emissions of carbon dioxide in specific scenarios when farming is taking place. And we have been able to correlate the carbon dioxide emissions globally with the temperature change globally. And so you can see from those graphs that from the year 1940 onwards is when there was the accelerated increase in temperature, increased globally by about 0.7 degrees Celsius. But before that, what was there was more or less 0.1, 0.2 degrees Celsius increase in temperature. And that's why I end up relating it not just with carbon dioxide emissions altogether, but also when we look at the emissions, which I can show you, because I mean, I wanted just to set the pace for us to think. But when I'm in class sometimes teaching, and I want to just tell my students doing master's degree or PhD about the emissions of carbon dioxide globally and different scenarios, you will be surprised at the level of emissions that are there. Let me give you an example. When we had COVID, a number of industries closed. You are aware that there was reporting that the level of emissions of carbon dioxide and even the fog we are talking about as the smoke from industries in specific industrial countries like China, it just went down. That tells you that the evidence of the carbon dioxide emissions relating with climate change or global increase in temperature correlation is very high. So when we do research, we normally use statistics where we say, at this level of confidence, we can conclude that climate change is related to the high levels of emissions of carbon dioxide. And then, similarly, we have done research and we know that methane emissions, as they increase in terms of relative productivity, there is also an increase in climate, in temperature. So if we combine now the nitrous oxide from poor farming methods, methane from poor farming and increased level of productivity, production, and then the increase in industries, you see this multiplier effect. Now this multiplier effect is this. Naturally, if there is that interglacial age you're talking about of the warming that's altogether right now ongoing, it is gradual. It doesn't become this sporadic that we see. Hence, one of the graphs I showed was the increase in extreme events with the continued increase in temperature. An example. Recently, we had never heard of a cyclone in Africa. We had never. What began happening in 2018 to 2019 to 2020? There was a cyclone where? In Mozambique, Madagascar. And then that ended up affecting, the rains were poured into the interior towards Malawi and Zimbabwe. And that moment, it was the beginning of the year. What happened with the rains in Kenya? When was the cyclone down there? The rains in Kenya delayed. And people are making you say, our rains have gone to Malawi or Southern Africa. And that is true, because, as I mentioned before, the wind movement from the Indian Ocean all the way from Madagascar all to Seychelles to the Somalia coast to Aden Red Sea, that's the wind that brings rainfall in Kenya. Now that year, the wind pattern diverted and strong winds which were carrying moisture ended up concentrating around Madagascar and then into Mozambique, and then flooding was there altogether, and our rains here went that side. It is all a relationship of wind pattern movement and the geography that we're in. So what I'm basically saying is, this has been documented through scientific research of over 30 years in a given area. Thank you. Now, 1971, the economic impact areas of climate change, as spoken by Ruth. The issue of climate change is something that is just now getting traction in this country. Before that, it wasn't quite a priority. The climate activity that Dr. Pacifica Ogola is leading just emerged the other day in Kenya. Before that, it wasn't quite there altogether. And then I'll come to something, ladies and gentlemen. I'm a Kenyan. The number of people who are in the field of climate change in the year 2004, I was amongst those. At that time, and amongst those, I was an employee at the World Agroforestry Center, ICRAF. And the unit did exist before in this national organization, but within the country, when at that time scientists were talking about climate change, no one would give them an ear altogether. So what am I saying? I'm saying this: the economic impacts of the effects of climate change is something that needs to be researched more, because the data has not been well collected around specific things that will climate change. It would have been the effect of flooding, would have been the effect of an extreme event, the effect of droughts. Those are in the theme of climate change. So what basically you're saying is that this is a researchable topic, and we can be able to actually work on it to extract more data. It needs some kind of methodology, and we can get the data through the Center for Statistics and also through TEGML and the universities, and then we also get it from national places like the FAO and the UN. We can be able to do that. But so far, there hasn't been like one standard document that has documented that. But perhaps through research in the universities, there could be a study through some PhD work or master study work in that area. Then, I also know that the University of Nairobi has got a climate change training program for master's and PhD. I'm yet to see a thesis on that, but I think there's something that can be researched on. Livestock is the biggest contributor to climate change in Kenya. So scientific direction of Africa in terms of adaptation. You are right, my brother and ladies and gentlemen. We are in a continent and a country where food insecurity is actually a challenge. It's a challenge because of many reasons, ranging from policies to political efforts to ensure that there is food security and all these other challenges. I will say this: adaptation is the priority for Africa, not mitigation, not removing the greenhouse gases from the atmosphere, but that is also equally important. What is important right now in Africa is us having food that is adequate, of high quality, for us to be nourished, so that there is food and nutrition security for us. And then, once we have that, then we look for ways of having the mitigation co-benefits by planting the trees and the agroforestry techniques, for example, and where possible, ensuring that there is a lot of soil organic matter on the soil so that you can reduce the greenhouse gases, bring them back onto the soil altogether, and specifically carbon dioxide. However, the priority is being food secure. And for that, it is now what we call the adaptation mechanisms to climate change. Then about methane and ruminants. Yes, ruminants, even in the wild contribute to this. I have gone to places and I've seen wild horses and wild donkeys. These are there, they contribute. But what we are basically saying is, as the lady mentioned, the natural processes or those in the wild, their contribution is actually insignificant in most cases. It is the man-made interventions of having a specific herd of animals, feeding them in a specific way altogether, and on top of that, degrading the environment, cutting the trees, and then producing the specific products that we are having from our factories, using those oil technologies that end up emitting carbon dioxide into the atmosphere, that is leading to this kind of challenge being there. I'm basically saying this: there are ways of producing these products from our factories using green energy and using more efficient technologies. But those more efficient technologies need more input in terms of investment, buying new machinery, those which are obsolete being taken off altogether. But you know what that will do? That will eat into the profits of these companies. So they want to do it slowly, so that they can have the shareholders getting the money. So we are in a situation where we have to get into negotiations, treaties, and the governments make enforcements to get some things done. Now, the recommendations, e.g. around emissions, are there. In Kenya, there is supposed to be vehicle inspection, even the matatus, for example. Why are they inspected? One of the things for inspection, for safety, actually is supposed to include the air quality. What is coming from the exhaust? Is this engine giving out this kind of high level of pollution altogether? But then, my sister, enforcement. That's the challenge that we have. You get my point? The recommendations are there. How many recommendations do we have in our beloved motherland that are not adhered to altogether? That is what we have as a challenge. If we enforce, and then people also are actually educated, and then they are enlightened, and then they know, and this is done, and then those of us who are learned like you and I, or the elite, lead by example, the others will also follow suit. That's what I'm basically saying. So there are standards for the factories when they are being set, be it for cement, be it for fertilizer, and food manufacturing altogether. But the thing is, that enforcement is supposed to be done by the regulatory agency that does that. Do they do their work well? That is another question for another day, in another event. Now, effects of climate change on mental health. Yes. Yes. The lifestyle diseases that you know about, the level of increase in cancer has been attributed to the enabling environment that has been created by the high levels, very, very high levels of pollution. Let me ask you a question. You've heard of people being put on oxygen. Why oxygen? It is because that will help to purify the system and bring about healing much faster. The more you are exposed to the air pollution that we are in, together with now that enabling environment for the malaria causing the mosquitoes and the dengue fever and all these others, the more the elevated levels of disease and the pest infestation due to climate change. It has been documented, and if you need data on that, we can be able to share, and I can also be able to say, if you just ask any medical doctor, there's a way from Cambridge, just go to Cambridge and ask for the data. You'll be given it and you'll be surprised, and then basically say, wow, we are living by the grace of God. Thank you.
A better round of applause for Daktari. So Daktari has really, answered the question so well. I don't need to belabor, but I picked 3 points. One, that adaptation is our priority, and 2, about enforcement. And what better people than journalists to make sure that these regulations that are passed are kept, and if they're not kept, you make noise about it. And then last but not least, as he spoke, and even through challenges that I see, we can even have, like those of you who may be pursuing master's or PhD, there's a lot you can pick from what he spoke about. So at this point, I'll hand over to my colleague Francis Muredi. He can take over and introduce the next session. Asanteni.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Let's clap for Linda for that wonderful job. And thank you very much, Dr. John. Let's clap for him again. He has a wealth of knowledge. I think you will hear even from the questions that are coming. And sometimes I wish you could probably be writing stories. You combine with your work, then so that we can also have that richness being manifested. And by doing that, we also learn. And I'm actually inviting you to one of our newsrooms one day. Come and we sit with us the whole day. From morning, we see how we produce stories. We give you one story to write, and we see how it will be. And then we see what people will say about it. At this juncture, we're going to another session whereby we'll be looking at what we have learned so far. And this particular session, we would like it to be a bit in-depth, so that when you get the mic, please take at least 2 minutes telling us what you have learned so far, and also where is the gap. Because we are having, we are developing thank you. I'm advised we will do it slightly different from that. But essentially, what we will be looking at, and Dr. John Recha will explain better, we really want to identify the gaps that exist as far as climate change and reporting is concerned. From where I sit, I have my own knowledge, I have my own experience, from what I have read, what I've been exposed to, but I have my own gaps. Even probably when I deploy reporters, or if I go to the field, I have my own personal challenges when I'm writing about climate change and communicating things. So if we are seated here as communication experts, with climate experts from the ministry, from all other partners, and we are trying to identify the gap and how do we fill this gap. Where is this gap and what do we need to do? I would like to invite once again Dr. John Recha, who will guide us on how exactly we will proceed with this session. Karibu.
May I take the opportunity of inviting my co-trainer to come and introduce himself, and then also ask our friend from GIZ to also come over to work on this together. You can introduce yourself, sir. Kwanza, yes.
Good afternoon. I'm known to many of you because I've been in this space for a while. I'm not really a co-trainer, but I'm just bringing in some government ministry backstopping. So that, because we, the Ministry of Environment, Climate Change and Forestry, where I work, for those that don't know me, my name is Temesi Mukani. I'm the head of public communications at that ministry. And for a very long time, we've worked on this program. And when we were preparing for the Africa Climate Summit, we noticed that the pool of climate reporters was not growing. And we felt that as part of that program, we needed to, build new capacities and grow this, because for us, climate action is a big story for Kenya. And you can all see the direction that this country is taking in terms of climate action. So I will actually just be bringing in my experience interacting in this space. and just sharing some of the opportunities that are there for us as climate journalists. I consider myself a climate journalist. I'm a trained journalist though, but I've not been in this space for a very long time. So, so I will be partnering with Prof here to just, bring in that little experience that I have, going to these conferences, interacting with the technical guys at the ministry, and also just to try and bring in, as Ruth was saying, there's so much technical expertise, especially in our ministry, on climate action. The whole spectrum of it, but little is known about what they do and the kind of content they have. And so that will be my responsibility. And I want to say, someone had mentioned that I needed to come, and now that it's a season for seeking forgiveness. Africa Climate Summit was chaos. It was crazy. Those of us who are in that space understand. So we rubbed each other the wrong way, but even the DP has asked for forgiveness. Why not me? So you can also forgive me. And I want to confirm and confess, and Rosalia can tell you that I'm one of the biggest advocates for media in this space. And this is just but the beginning of greater partnerships. And Ken will tell you there's so much that we are working on together. Look at the story of the BC partnership. I had a meeting in the embassy the other day, and I have converted all my as the secretary and the principal secretary. The two principal secretaries now understand. And when you saw Ngeno, that he means business. And for the first time, I think we have a ministry that really is climate reporting and wants to build the next group of climate reporters and wants to invest in that space. And so that is what exactly I'm bringing in. I'm not a seasoned as some of you. Some of you are very good climate writers and reporters and researchers, but I'm just trying to bring in that bridge between the newsroom and the ministry, because we are the custodians of climate policy. And so that is it. Also, I will just be bringing in some of the things that are happening now, that are current. Like now, I've seen people who are coming from counties, and there's money that is starting to go to counties for climate change. We've just come, I'm sorry I was not here in the morning because we were launching a partnership with the Ministry of Education on the 15 billion National Tree Growing Program. And last week, my cabinet secretary was in Nyanza, in the Western Kenya region, to launch the FLOCA program for that region. So there's money going to the counties as well. And because I sit close to that table, now this country is about tables and what Natembea is saying. So when I sit on that table, I speak for the media and I speak for journalists. So as part of that FLOCA money, it has to benefit the journalist. And that is where our journalists in the regions will benefit from. So I'm putting my foot firmly on the ground, assuring you that for as long as God gives us life at that ministry, we will make sure that every individual program that comes here has a climate component. And of course, having been a journalist, I know at some point you will betray the profession and join this other side. So we must bake a bigger cake, so that if there's a program coming and there's a communication component, why not? Because you're the one in this space. Of course, you see the media space is shrinking, that's for sure. Our business reporters, many of them got an opportunity to go join corporate world, but for science, agriculture, we've not had that opportunity. So this is our time, because now climate change is a real thing. And you guys are lucky in this space at this time. So when that time comes, I think there should be space for all of us to transition into and influence Kenya's climate action agenda. Lastly, there's so much that is happening in this space. As you may have heard, after the Africa Climate Summit, recently when the president went to AU, the African Union convinced that the Africa Climate Summit Secretariat be set up in Nairobi. means that Nairobi now becomes the Africa Climate Action headquarters of the continent. So there's so much that will be happening in that space. And I want to interest you to start looking at these opportunities. Be on the lookout. If you need government support, please, come through me. People look out for each other, isn't it? Lawyers look out for each other. Economists look out for each other. As journalists, don't look out for each other. Instead, we compete. So that should not be the situation. But also, just to say, as a ministry, I think we are seeing a growth in climate reporting. I think we are trying as much as possible to be accessible. I know my CSS and my PSS, my CS and my PSS are not they're not that media, but I'm pushing. For those who've been in this space, Helen and everyone, you see I'm trying. I keep trying, I'm putting a lot of content out there for you guys, trying to get interviews. And I think as an in-house person within a ministry or an organization, that's what I should do, so that you guys are not running dry. I know how it means not to have a story, and you need a story. So basically, those are some of the things that we're boring you with today and tomorrow and the days to come. So feel free to engage. Tell us where we're not doing well as a ministry in terms of communicating climate, and what you think you need to do. If you have projects, some of them have good projects out there, by the way, that you only need a ministry endorsement. Yeah, I know as journalists know how to look for these things. You want to travel, the only thing that is missing is your government's endorsement. I will fight for you. That's giving you for assurance. So you just bring it up. As long as I know the only thing that this government can't give you is money or buy you a ticket, but giving you a letter on a letterhead to present it somewhere, so to be given a visa to travel, that should not be a problem. So those are some of the opportunities that we need to look out for, and this is just the beginning of a greater partnership between the Kenya Editors Guild and the Ministry of Environment. Rosario will tell you we've worked on this thing for a while, and there is much more that we're going to work together, including for our guys in the regions and everyone else who is interested in climate reporting, because we feel it as a ministry is our responsibility to build the next crop of climate reporters. So for those very many words, I want to say let's enjoy this training. Let's share our experiences. I think the next phase is even more exciting. I will leave it to Professor Richard to introduce it, but that is where I'm more interested in feedback. Asante sana.
Thank you, Martinez. All right, may I invite my colleague? Where we are heading to now is some group work and discussions that will enable us to get things on the right path. So I have got key questions here, which we drafted, that will guide in the group discussion starting from today. And this group work that we are doing all together will go on to tomorrow. But we are starting off, and I would like to give my colleague the chance to help us with group work formation, and then we go to the questions.
Thank you, Dr. Good afternoon again. So, I think sometime when I was making my remarks, I identified some of the groups that are represented here, and I think we will use the same to form the groups. This session ideally is to identify three level of gaps. Some people call it baseline assessment or baseline survey, yeah? But we don't have to go to the classroom at this point. So we'll look at technical gap. Oh, I thought that is meant for me. So we'll look at the technical gap or gaps. We'll also look at something called the sectorial gap. And then we'll also look at the last part, which is a bit broad, generally on facilitation gaps. like earlier on somebody said that you hardly get support from your media houses to go to court and other things, right? So we want to also assess those kind of accession gap and see where and how can we get facilitation to go to these critical events. So with that, colleagues, friends, we will group ourselves in in four, which is, I know there are multimedia journalists in the room. How many people are multimedia journalists? People who write reports and do, content for various channels. How many do we have? But do you have a preference? Would you rather work for radio instead of TV or instead of print? Multimedia journalists in the house. Do you have some level of preference? How many of you, okay, please just raise up your hand again. Those people who are multimedia journalists. I know Aseto, if you do both radio spies and you also news. Yeah? Okay. So let me ask them with you. Do you have a preference? Or you love it being a jack of all? Sorry? So to a point, yes. So you don't have a preference. Okay? And then you? You which one do you prefer? Who do you prefer? Yes? Print. So when I'm grouping people go to print. Very good. For you, I'm looking for your place. Digital. Oh, okay, fine. Aseto? Do you prefer them seeing you or hearing you? So, well, we divide broadcast into radio and TV so that we really get perspective. The different audiences, by the way, yeah? When I was doing the town halls, there were two different audiences. Because I engaged Radio Africa through Radio Jambo to conduct some town halls. And the audiences were different from the ones that were, we were having on TV. So do you prefer radio or TV? TV, fine. The other one? Oh, okay, which one? Digital, very well. So colleagues, this end, on my extreme left, let's talk here left. So this table, radio. So radio guys be on this table. Then digital be on the far end. TV on the other hand. Which one is remaining? Print on that end. Multimedia. Multimedia, you join me where I be. So, okay, so that I can distribute you to the rest of the groups. Okay, can we just make the change, then the move, then we can take you through the questions. Radio, digital, TV, and then print.
Passado.
Let's move really fast. I'm telling you, we're in a world where information moves faster than journalists. Huh? Information moves faster than journalists. Radio, this side, extreme right side of the room. Upper, Iban Nico. Then digital, let's just move, kindly. Let's move as fast as the information. I did print is panel. Then upper the TV. Mahame. Okay. I didn't say people to leave, so I am yet to reach. Okay. So radio is set. Digital is set. There's a table here. I don't know which one it is. I am yet to understand. And then TV. This is TV, right? Okay. Very good. Now the next step. Identify a group leader. Identify a group leader and a rapporteur. I'm a minute taker. A group leader and a rapporteur. Please identify a group leader and a rapporteur. So group radio, already identified?
Yes, yes.
You're good. Yes. Group leader and a rapporteur. Perfect. Group digital, ready? Rapporteur and group leader? Done. Okay, you have 1 minute. Group TV, rapporteur and the leader? Sorted. Perfect. Group TV, group print. Ready? Perfect. Now, so the rapporteurs in those groups should write this down. The rapporteurs in those groups should write this down. Number 1. Specialization here means radio, TV, print, or digital. So what are the climate change knowledge gaps? What are the climate change knowledge gaps in your specialization? Number 2, what are the key sectors? What are the key sectors that you interact with in your specialization? What are the key sectors that you interact with in your specialization? And what challenges do you face? And what challenges do you face as part of the same questionnaire? And what challenges do you face in getting credible informants, or what you call what do you call them? Sources, yes. And what challenges do you face in getting credible sources? Question 2 is all? Radio, you good?
Yes.
Digital, you good? Question 1, question 2? Perfect. Print? Perfect. Then TV? You good? Oh. I said, oh, you said to be TV alone? Okay. Or the ladies have displaced you. Perfect. Now, question 3, the last one. So this is a very general question. How well is the media in Kenya enabled to cover climate change? How well is the media in Kenya enabled to cover climate change? So that is an open-ended question that should have a bit of the problems plus the solutions, at least for it alone. For question 1, question 2, just focus on, just answer it as it, answer them as they are. Now you have have 45 minutes. How long do we have the session? Very well. So 45 minutes. Please discuss, and then the rapporteur to write very good notes. By the end of after 45 minutes, deposit the notes with the main rapporteur, who is sitting alone here at the center where the chief guest was sitting. Deposit your notes with her. Then tomorrow you can choose to make a presentation. If that's the group can agree to make a presentation. Tomorrow you will present and take us through your deliberations. So, your time starts now.
Yes.
say as a point of system, and then we find and explain what we mean by a system. This is how we are packaging this environment that about somebody like Asena. You have the experts. But I like and listen for use of vernacular.
I know you want somebody who can speak English and come and talk about so your mother tongue is also
my concern also is jobs where some of these and I normal time we use the next one is I'm using as a big one. You try to like you know, it is also a challenge itself. Yeah. The first time is it understood by no, the first time I had to work with the church. So this gap is
so you have to wait.